Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this week's video I'm going to be taking a look at this Partner 351 chainsaw. I picked this up from the tip last week. I paid £10 for it from the recycling centre, and I'm going to see if I can get it running and flog it on. I've already bought a carburettor kit for it, a new spark plug, and I'm going to be stripping the carburettor down, giving it a clean, replacing the gaskets. Whenever I buy anything from the tip, I always give it a once over, make sure it's got all the components to it, bits haven't been robbed off of it. I start by making sure that the engine's not seized, it's got good compression there. I have a look at the primer bulb, see if it's cracked, or because that's something you'll have to replace if the rubber's perished. Have a look in the fuel tank, see that everything's in there. Check the filters on the end of the fuel hose. And that's it really. If it looks good, then I tend to go for it, and it's something that hopefully you can get going again. The chances are someone's had this sitting in their shed, they're having a clear out and they've just thrown it down the tip because they don't want it anymore, or they've replaced it with a newer one. Let's give it a strip down, rebuild the carb and see if we can get it going. So let's start by removing the chain. So we're just working on the engine. It's a bit of a safety precaution as well when you're working on chainsaws. So that's the chain brake part, that can come off. And then we can remove the chain. Like so. With the chain removed, we can now remove the top cover. And that just lifts out the way. So with the top cover removed, we can take off the air filter. That might need a clean. Doesn't look too bad in this case. So now I'm going to remove the spark plug lead and take out the spark plug. Before I put in the new spark plug, I'm just going to use this spark plug tester to make sure we're getting voltage to the spark plug. So I just plug this into the HT lead and put this on the spark plug, like so. And then when I pull this, you shouldn't have any compression there because the top of the engine's open. When I pull this, I should be able to see the light come on in the spark plug tester here. So let me just turn the lights off. Make sure the ignition switch is on here. In the off position, if I pull it, no spark. If I turn the ignition switch on, be careful if you're holding the spark plug, because you will get a shock. We can see that the ignition is working. So that's good. We can put the new spark plug in and connect the HT lead. So new spark plug in and give it a little nip. Be very careful not to over tighten it because this is only cast aluminium. And then we can put the HT lead on. So now I'm going to remove the carburettor. So I'll undo these two nuts. Here it comes. So now I need to remove this plastic cover. And it's got the throttle cable on the bottom here, so just get some pliers and pull that out. So this rubber cap can come off, put that to one side. So with the carburettor out, you just need to disconnect the throttle cable, take the fuel lines off. They might need a little bit of manipulation. Just a little wiggle, like so. Let's put the chainsaw to one side and focus on the carburettor. And I put everything to one side. Now turn the carburettor over, and I'll take the plate off the bottom as well. Put all the little screws to one side, and then the bottom plate can come off. This metering diaphragm and the other gasket. This metering diaphragm looks in a bit of a poor state. We can compare this to the new one in a minute, but that doesn't look too good. And this might be the problem. If we have a look in here, we've got our needle valve. If we unscrew this, I put our finger on here because there's a little spring underneath here. So put your finger on there and unscrew this. And the needle valve assembly can just be pulled out. The spring and the needle valve itself. Put that all to one side. Right, with everything removed, we can go ahead and clean this. Now if you've got an ultrasonic cleaner, they're supposed to be really good for cleaning carburetors. I need to get one of those at some point, but for now I'm just going to use good old CARB spray. I'm just going to get the CARB spray and spray into all the little holes. You can get your compressor on it and blow out all the little holes. You just want this to be as clean as possible. When it comes to rebuilding the carb, I like to empty out the new gasket kit and then just matching up the ones that we need with the old ones. So there's my new metering diaphragm, and as you can see the old one is a bit deformed. That's what it should look like, and that's what it looks like at the moment, so it's probably not been getting the right amount of fuel through. That's a bit brittle. So there's a new one of those, and we need a new gasket for that. So that one. So I've got all the little gaskets and new needle valve, new spring, new screen. For this particular carburettor, the kit comes with lots of spare gaskets because the kit suits a few different carburettors, so you have to pick out the gaskets that you need. So I'll put my spring in there, and then this assembly will drop in there. Then I'm going to put my finger on it to hold the spring down in place. Get my little screw. And screw that down in there. Now I'm going to get my metering diaphragm, and this piece here pushes down to open and close the valve, the needle valve. So that goes down on there. This gasket on top. Lovely. I can flip it over now. new mesh screen to go in here. Just get something that's clean. Here we go, this will do. And I push this down into the hole. These fuel lines aren't too bad. So this comes from the primer bulb here. Poke that down in there. That way. This one goes on the bottom of the carb. Might require some pliers just to help get the fuel lines on. If they're all perished, you might need to replace the fuel lines as well. I'm not going to cover that in this video. I'm purely doing a carb rebuild and trying to get this thing started. I can put the top hose on now. Might be easier to put the throttle cable on first actually. It's just a bit of trial and error with these lots of the time. So let's get that in there. Carburetor on. Make sure none of the fuel lines are pinched up. That one's a little bit pinched up there, but the primer bulb's still working, so that's fine. I'm going to get this cover. Get the throttle cable. Okay, the throttle cable's in the bottom now. Should be able to push it all back. Make sure your fuel lines haven't come off. Make sure everything's clear. Make sure the throttle cable works. And then we can put our nuts back on. Give it a nip at each side. Air filter back on. And that's the carburetor side. Done. I'm now going to remove the exhaust muffler. Just give that a clean out. You want your engine to be able to breathe, so it's important to make sure that the exhaust is clear. Keep this heat shield in place, that's fine. And that is absolutely spotless in there, so no problems. Line up with that. So we know we're going to get a spark now. The ignition coil works. We proved that with the spark plug tester. It's got a brand new spark plug in it. The kill switch works, we know that. The carburetor's been stripped apart and we've replaced all the gaskets with new ones. The fuel lines are fine, they're not perished. The primer bulbs pumping nicely, we haven't got any kinks in the fuel lines. We've taken the exhaust muffler off, that's all nice and clean inside. We've got a clean air filter on, so hopefully when we put some fresh fuel in this, we should be able to get it to start. We'll tune it up, put the chain back on, and then hopefully it'll be ready to sell. So I'm going to be tuning this carburetor from scratch. I've messed around with these screws in the past to try and get this chainsaw started, so it's all out of kilter now, so I need to start from scratch. So on the left here we've got the low speed screw, on the right we've got the high speed screw, and up here we've got the idle screw. So I'm going to start by winding the low speed screw in all the way until it stops. Don't want to force it, just until it stops. The same with the high speed screw. Wind that in all the way until it stops, and then I'm going to back these out 1.5 turns. So that's half, that's 1, that's 1.5. Same with the high speed screw, that's half, That's 1, that's 1.5. And that's sort of like a default for these carburetors, so at least you can get the chainsaw started and then later on you can fine tune it. I'm also going to do the same with the idle screw. I'm going to wind this in all the way, and I'm going to back this out 1.5 turns also. So half, 1, 1.5. And when this starts, it's going to be idling high, and I might just need to wind this back out to bring the revs down. There's a 40:1 mix of petrol and 2-stroke oil. I've used 200 ml of petrol and 5 ml of oil. I think it takes 8 primes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pull the choke out, put it to the on position, and it should hopefully start after a few pulls. So let's see if it starts. We'll know fairly soon if it's going to start. Yeah. Let's put the choke in and it should fire away. Beautiful. Okay, the first thing I'm going to want to do is adjust the idle speed because it's going to be idling high. So I'm going to do that by winding the idle screw out until the engine speed slows down. So I'm just concentrating on the low speed screw at the moment. There we go. There's lots of good videos on YouTube for tuning chainsaws, so I'm not going to make one. I'm not an expert at it. That's something I'd like to get better at. So let's put the covers back on. We'll let it cool down and see how it performs from cold. As always, my videos are meant as a guide only. I take no responsibility for damage caused to yourself or your equipment, so make sure you stay safe and use the appropriate PPE. So there we go, we saved this little saw from landfill. I was debating whether to keep this saw as it's quite a nice one, but I'm going to have to move this one on. I've already got a few saws lying around the place and I don't want to be a hoarder, you know, it's easily done. So as always, thank you for watching these videos. I really appreciate the support that I'm getting on the channel. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content. Click that little alarm bell and set notifications to all, and then that way you'll get updates when I post new videos. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys, take care.